voter intimidation on election day. Our observers witnessed tables set up in close proximity by an organization called Forever Associate Zimbabwe and received reports that members of the organization were allegedly recording the names and ID numbers of voters. We also noted that members of FAS were conducting citizen observation. The presence fueled allegations of voter intimidation. Party agents of the main political parties were present in all polling stations observed. Whilst they lacked copies of the voter roll, they were nonetheless diligent to the extent evident in the conduct of their duties. Security was present at every polling station observed. In most areas, they were professional and unobstructive and carried out their duties diligently. We note that in some instances, security personnel were situated inside polling stations, although they did not appear to interfere or to be an intrusive presence. Close of quote. The count was a detailed and thorough process carried out by professional, dedicated, and resilient polling officials in the presence of attentive party agents and observers. The close and count followed a due process for the most part, with a high degree of transparency. However, it was noted that at some stations, particularly those in tents, lighting was insufficient, which may have delayed the counting process. Arrest and detention of local observers. Ladies and gentlemen, we are following with concern the course of the detention of 41 local civil society observers during a series of raids in Harare on the night of the 23rd of August, including at this hotel. We hope that the legal justification for their detention will become clearer as further information comes to light, and we will definitely be interested in that information and hope that it can be provided to us soon. In conclusion, our overall assessment of the voting process is that it was well conducted and peaceful. However, there exist a number of significant issues that impact on the credibility, transparency, and inclusivity of the process. It has been an honor for us to be part of this important process. As we have already noted, this was a critical moment for the people of Zimbabwe. Elections are an opportunity for you to choose your leaders, but to do so in a peaceful environment in which the rights of all citizens are respected and the role of the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission and other key participants in the electoral process is respected and is supported. I would therefore encourage all political leaders and their supporters to continue exercising patience and restraint in the days ahead to allow the result process to be brought to its natural conclusion in accordance with legal provisions and all the laws of Zimbabwe. The Commonwealth family continues to stand in solidarity with you, the people of Zimbabwe. We wish you well and thank you very much for all the attention that we've received since our arrival here in Zimbabwe. And finally, I'd just like to thank the members of the Commonwealth Observer Group for the amazing work that they have done, for being objective, impartial, independent, and not for monitoring or supervising elections, but for observing the 2023 elections of Zimbabwe. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. We are now able to take a few questions before the next group has to set up in this room. If you could please state your name and your media organisation. There are some roving mics, I believe. Yeah, right behind you. So, if you would start with you. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Calvin. I work for the Namibian newspaper and Desert Radio. You made mention of the presence of an organization called Forever Associates Zimbabwe. We're just coming from a press conference of the SADC Observer Mission, and beyond mentioning that there are allegations of a quasi-intelligence organization-led organization that's intimidating people in this poll. The SADC mission says that they have actually seen these people because it was easy to see them. They were wearing regalia, of course, emblazoned with their initials. And I'd like to find out whether all that physical observation was made by the lenses and eyes of the Commonwealth Observation Mission, or you just heard of the rumors. Thank you.
Okay, let me answer that one first. Say that if you actually listen carefully to the statement that I just read, I said that members of the Commonwealth Observer Group saw these tables that were occupied by members of FAS, and that they were, in some cases, very close to the polling stations. And we noted that in our report. We have spoken about it, and obviously we'll include it also in our final report. So it isn't about rumors. If it was just rumors, I don't think we would have given it such a prominent place in our report. But it was something that we ourselves also observed.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Yes,
So,
thank you so much.
should we just wait?
Thank you so much. My name is Manashi Mabuka from Sources Media and Messages. From Sources Media. Sorry, I was a bit late. Can you say this election was free, fair, and credible? And is it going to affect redeployment of Zimbabwe to Commonwealth?
Okay, first of all, I think those two processes are separate and independent. I think I answered this question a while. I think I answered the question a while back. That these are two separate processes. The readmission of Zimbabwe into the Commonwealth family is an issue, a process that has been ongoing. We've had 3 missions that have come to Zimbabwe and engaged the government and other stakeholders in Zimbabwe.
Sorry, the sound is bad.
Is that good? Okay, can you hear me now? Okay, I had indicated that in fact this was a question that we had responded to on several occasions, and indicated that the two processes were quite separate. The reinstatement of Zimbabwe to the Commonwealth is something that has been ongoing for a while. There is a process that is in place. 3 missions have already taken place. The missions have engaged the government and all other stakeholders, including members of the opposition party, but also the media. And that process will continue. We were invited by the government of Zimbabwe to come and observe the elections, and we'll be issuing a final report. We have issued a few other statements, the preliminary statement that we issued, and we have also issued this preliminary report today. We will issue a final report on the elections, but I do not think that we should confuse the two processes. The reinstatement of Zimbabwe is not just about the elections; it's actually much more broad, and we look at very, very many different issues before Zimbabwe is reinstated.
But can you say it was fair?
If you heard what I said that the atmosphere was peaceful, that the conditions were in place for a credible election to be held. I think that the election process is not over yet. Voting has taken place. We wait for all the other processes to actually take place before we issue our final report, which will give you a clear indication of how we have categorized the elections of Zimbabwe.
News Press. On the same note, your colleague from SADC said that the election on several aspects fell short of democratic standards. Do you agree with that assessment?
Well, I've actually indicated where we as a group found that there was room for much more improvement. We talked about the issue of ZEC's transparency, the level of communication, the information flow during the election day. We have spoken to the delay in the supply of ballot papers, and especially in some parts of the country, including the major urban areas. So there are areas where we obviously need to see much more improvement and much more work done. But if we were talking about the overall atmosphere during the elections, I was completely impressed by the numbers of Zimbabweans that came out. And I think all of us need to congratulate the people of this country for coming out in such large numbers, for being patient and waiting for very many hours to cast their vote. Their belief in the democratic process that their country is going through. And again, I think that all the processes are not over yet, but what we have observed has given us a lot of encouragement. The voter lists that were out, we went back and stayed, almost throughout the night to witness the counting of the vote, and the fact that it was done so transparently and loudly, where even the spoiled votes were so carefully considered by everybody. So yes, there are many areas where there was a reason to really congratulate the people of this country. The meticulous and very diligent manner in which the polling agents worked. And it was in very easy circumstances. In some cases, the tents, as everybody I think has noted, were not very encouraging and welcoming, but they stayed put, carried out their mandates, they carried out the elections, made sure everybody voted. I think that we were very worried that not everybody would be able to cast their vote, and were relieved to see that an additional 12 hours was given. And everywhere we went, where the polling material had come late, the presiding officer came out and told us, we started voting at 8 p.m. We will not stop until 8 a.m. It has to be 12 hours, and we have instructions that has to be the case. So I think we need to embrace some of the measures that were put in place by the people of Zimbabwe to make sure that they carried out their mandate to facilitate elections in such a calm manner, in a very peaceful manner, even where people were agitated because of the lateness of the ballot papers coming in. Those that left came back and were told that people just passed word, look, the ballot papers are here now, please come back and vote. And I think the reason was because they really wanted their will expressed freely, and they wanted to make sure that they played their part in this democratic process. So I just want to commend the people of this country. I think that they did a great job in turning out in large numbers, in casting their vote, in the patience that they displayed.
Thank you very much, Chair. We've got time for one more question, after which there will be refreshments outside for everyone, and we will post the statement on our website for your access. Gentleman here,
Yeah, question for my freelance journalist. How much are you convinced by ZEC's excuse to deliver election material in time that it was due to court challenges, particularly when you look at the fact that this election material were not delivered in traditionally in the areas that are known as opposition strongholds. I'm mentioning Harare and Bulawayo.
Well, look, we were very concerned about the delay. And for us, I think the challenge was that some were delivered on time and others were not delivered on time. If it was just about the two main issues, the logistics and the court cases, then the delay would have occurred across all the ballot papers. And so we were actually really concerned about that. Very happy that they were delivered in the end. We're hoping that we'll get a full report on that. We have requested for it. And we will make sure that we make our conclusions very, very clear in our final report. But we were also concerned about that. And we were also concerned about the reasons they were given.
Thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate your coming today during a very busy time. We have to let the next group set up, so I can ask you to leave the room. There are tea and coffee and refreshments available outside. As I said, our statement will be posted on the website thereafter.
And intimidation resulted ultimately in a climate of fear. The violent arrest around 40 members of ZESN and the DRC on the 23rd of August adds to our grave concerns. Both organizations are respected and are credible human rights defenders and part of the global network of domestic election monitors, GNDEM. They are also exposed by the European Union. Both organizations, I would like to remind these aspects, are accredited citizen observer organization and exercise their constitutional rights. A policy statement on 24th of August said that it was for coordinating the alleged release of election results. Ultimately, the elections fell short of many regional and international standards, including key principles of equality, universality, transparency, and accountability. The election was also hampered by significant issues regarding the independence and the transparency of the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, ZEC. The ZEC missed opportunities to increase public trust in the integrity of voting and to result management. The initial failure of ZEC to provide the critical electoral material, notably paper ballots, which resulted in many polling stations opening with severe delays, late into the night or next day, led to an increasingly tense atmosphere in some locations. This was mainly observed in urban centers like Harare or Bulawayo, but also in Manicaland. Overall, the UOM commends, however, the large number of voters who remain in queues for extensive times to exercise their right to vote. ZEC's communication regarding delays, its reason, and the actual voting hours was insufficient. UOM observers assessed the election day as generally calm. Voting was assessed positively. However, I would like to stress on the fact that unauthorized individuals, for example, members of the Forever Associate Zimbabwe, fast-tracked voters at nearly 1/5 of the polling stations we observed, potentially indicating pressure. UOM observers also saw flyers that were falsely informing voters of electoral boycotts by CCC, which may have confused some of them. The UOM noted the central role of the judiciary in the process, given the unprecedented high number of pre-election court challenges pertaining to both right to contest and the validity of all key legal texts, some of which remain still nowadays unresolved. Many UOM interlocutors conveyed that the trust into judicial system is low. Although voters were offered the choice of political alternatives, the overall inclusivity of the candidate registration remained limited. Undue registration criteria and ZEC's inconsistent and discretionary implementation, and an unreasonably high fee, and ZEC's demand for US dollars cash payments created obstacles to inclusivity. For example, the registration fee for a presidential candidate was $20,000 US, while for National Assembly candidates, the fee was $1,000. 1/5 of all aspiring candidates were rejected. And these numbers, this amount of money, was a 20-fold increase compared to the previous elections. The UOM took also note of a low participation of women candidates. While ZEC's pre-electoral preparations went largely according to schedule, court disputes over candidate registration caused delays in ballot printing and also impacted postal voting. Nevertheless, ZEC promised repeatedly that all systems are go. This was not the case on election day and resulted in a second day of voting. Furthermore, ZEC did not consistently address public concerns related to constituency boundary delimitation, voter registration, candidate registration, as well as ballot security. For instance, the final list of polling stations was only made public on election day. Voter registration was a significant point of contention. ZEC did not publicly disclose details prior to this election of its efforts to verify the accuracy of the voter registration data. Before elections, ZEC did not provide fully analyzable electronic copies of the voters' roll to civil society. The campaign presented voters with a range of viewpoints, but there was a lack of a level playing field, particularly regarding the freedom of assembly, which was unduly restricted by arbitrary implementations of the Maintenance of Peace and Order Act, the so-called MPOA. Police used the force to disperse several opposition gatherings, and some instances of intimidation and violence took place, including one killing. The UOM's media analysis revealed similar shortcomings. State-controlled media allocated substantially more airtime and print space to the ruling party and President Mnangagwa and the government. For example, the UOM media analysis revealed that state ZBC devoted over 2/3 of its news and current affairs coverage to ZANU-PF, the president and the government. ZBC owned the radio stations, gave the ruling party almost all their election-related airtime. Digital rights are restricted by law, notably online freedom of speech, access to the internet, access to information online, right to privacy, and data protection. These resulted in fear and self-censorship by online users. Manipulated election-related content was also circulated widely on social media and traditional media, negatively affecting voters' ability to make informed decisions. The EU election observation missions deplore an extensive and sustained disinformation campaign against the EOM and other international observer organizations by some media and social media platforms. These unacceptable attempts are to discredit the mission and are seen as a blatant disinformation of the Zimbabwean public. They do reflect a continued effort to undermine the European Union Electoral Observation Mission and credible election observation. The UOM will present a final report with a comprehensive analysis in about 2 months. This report will reflect also the UOM's assessment of the entire electoral process. At the same time, the UOM will make recommendations for future electoral processes, and those recommendations, of course, will be for consideration. I thank all of you for your attention.
Thank you, and I'll pass the floor to Mr. Andreas Schieder, head of the delegation of the European Parliament.
Thank you. As already said, my name is Andreas Schieder, and I'm a member of the European Parliament, and it is my pleasure to address you today on behalf of the parliamentary delegation. Before doing so, I also want to express my big thanks for this excellent and good cooperation with the other electoral observers, especially those from the different African organizations. We are 7 members of the European Parliament, representing a large political spectrum and coming even from 6 different countries of the European Union. We have been present during these significant days for Zimbabwe as a part of the European Union Election Observation Mission, and we take note of the late arrival of the invitation to observe these elections. Nevertheless, we are here to perform our work, as we do everywhere in the world, because our presence was requested by the Zimbabwean authorities. First and foremost, I want to express our full endorsement to the finding presented today by my dear colleague and friend, Chief Observer, Mr. Fabio Massimo Castaldo. I thank him and all the team for their work and cooperation. During the past few days we have been here, we met with national authorities, candidates, party representatives, religious leaders, civil society organizations, and media representatives. And the chief observer already has given throughout an overview of the mission's preliminary findings, and I therefore wish to focus on those issues that we as elected politicians consider as crucial. Let me start by stressing two very important points for our delegation. First, there are the crackdown and raids that led to the arrest of 39 people from local observer organizations in this very hotel, which were from CESN and ERC. As subscriber of the Declaration of Principles for Election Observation, we strongly condemn these unacceptable attacks against citizens observers, which are considered by the European Parliament and globally human rights defenders. CESN and its part is part of the GNDM, the Global Network of Domestic Election Monitors, and it is considered as an independent and credible organization. To make it clear, the European Parliament asked for their release. The second point is the extensive disinformation campaign against international observer organizations, especially the European Union Election Observation Mission. We remind that the EU-EUN was invited by the government to conduct an independent assessment of the electoral process. And as it is said in the preliminary statement, the election fell short of many regional and international standards, including equality, universality, and transparency. Besides being largely peaceful, the electoral campaign was severely affected by the Patriotic Act, adopted just last month, and the discussion about the private voluntary organizations bill. According to our interlocutors, these have led to a severe shrinking of democratic space, including for the exercise of freedom of expression, association, and assembly, but also to this self-censorship of civil society and the media. In the course of our meetings, we often heard complaints about the lack of transparency of the independence of ZEC, Zimbabwe Electoral Commission. We were also told that it did not provide effective and timely information during the electoral campaign, in particular concerning the voter roll. Moreover, in the past couple of days, our observers noted that the results management processed by ZEC lacked verifiability and traceability. And we regret that ZEC did not receive our delegation despite several requests from our side, and taking in consideration that the substantial technical and financial contribution the European Union gave to these elections. Equally, several local actors with whom we spoke expressed a serious misgivings concerning the independence of the judiciary regarding the resolution of recent electoral disputes and candidate exclusions. We all agree that democratic competition should always take place on a level playing field and on fairness. No candidate or party should have unequal access to state institutions, resources, and media. And we were also reported of misuse of state resources and public office. For example, salary increases for civil servants and support measures for traditional leaders during the electoral campaign. And in addition, we were informed that the state TV broadcaster has been biased in favor of the party in government. An incumbent also benefits from a minimally regulated political finance framework, as it is currently the case in Zimbabwe. Furthermore, the inclusiveness of the process suffered for the 20-fold increase of the registration fees for presidential and parliamentary candidates. We also heard that for the settling of these fees, a payment in US dollars was demanded in most cases, and very often in cash. And information that had previously not been given to those who wanted to register. And this meant that over 1/5 of the candidates were denied registration. We also deplored that women made up less than 50% of all registered candidates. And compared to 2018, where 4 presidential candidates were female, this time only 1 was able to run only through legitimation. We believe that the next government should facilitate improvement on these fronts and on many others. During election day, I cannot start without turning to the election day, I cannot start without stating the obvious. these elections were challenging and difficult. Our delegation split into 3 teams, and one team observed Harare, another Marondera and its surroundings, and another one in Chichoy. We would like to praise the passion, resilience, and the democratic aspirations of the citizens of Zimbabwe, who spent several hours queuing to cast their vote. In several districts, including the capital Harare, papers for the local elections arrived with unacceptable delay, with the opposition alleging the delays disproportionately affecting their strongholds, as assessed by the mission's statements. The atmosphere on the election day was relatively peaceful, but at this tense, largely due to the extremely late arrivals of some ballot papers, but also due to the behavior of party activists who placed desks in the premises of the polling stations to take names of the citizens at the entrance and the exit of the polling stations. In a number of cases, polling stations opened dramatically late, while some having to close down again shortly after due to lack of ballot paper. This problem occurred frequently in urban areas, while rural areas had received sufficient amount of ballot papers. The conditions for people waiting in the line to fulfill their civic duties for many hours were quite dire, given heat and lack of shade or water. We also experienced rising frustrations of many voters. While waiting to cast their vote, they found out that their relatives in the rural areas had already voted. We observed that when tents were used as polling stations, it made voting more difficult and challenging for both staff and voters. Voters were still waiting to vote until late at night, and they were highly frustrated, complaining about the disorganized nature of the elections. Better preparation of the election day by the Electoral Commission could have contributed to reducing many problems and resulting tensions. This being said, we would like to extend our sincere thanks to the thousands of Zimbabweans who worked as polling station staff. They did their best to ensure that the proceeding ran as smoothly as possible. Above all, on behalf of all the team, I would like to express our admiration for the civic spirit and the democratic aspirations shown by the people of Zimbabwe, who went to vote and were ready to spend an entire day and maybe also an entire night waiting in line to fulfill their civic duties. The presence of political agents in the polling station is also considered quite constructive. I would now like to refer on the post-electoral period. Moreover, clear and conclusive result must be announced within the electoral deadline. Ensuring transparency, traceability of counting will strengthen confidence in this step. This is critical, and SEC should be fully transparent in the tabulation and publication of results. Any dispute regarding the electoral process should be addressed peacefully according to the established legal procedure. And it is also crucial that the judiciary shall perform its constitutional duties in an independent, impartial manner. And finally, I would like to underline that the European Union, including the European Parliament, stands ready to support a reform process in Zimbabwe. A reform process which is inclusive and democratic and works to ensure a stable and prosperous future for all its citizens. And in this respect, we are available to provide our assistance to ensure the best possible implementation of the EU-EUN recommendations. Thank you for your attention.
I open now the floor for questions. Please introduce yourself by name and also let us please know the media outlet you work for. Where do we have questions? We have one in the middle. We have microphones, but it might take a moment to get through the crowd.
Thank you. I wouldn't stand up just in respect of my colleagues who are taking vital footage. Having listened to your summation, my name is Kelvin. I am a journalist with the Namibian newspaper. Having listened to your findings, what then is the conclusion? Are you in a position to make that conclusion now, since this is a preliminary statement? But the question is it a fair and free and credible election as far as you're concerned?
I would say we do one by one.
Thank you very much for your question. First of all, let me remind something very important. This is not in the mandate of our mission to do a certification of elections. What is our mandate, what is our commitment, is to observe the elections and the whole electoral process, including the pre-electoral and the post-electoral one. That's why we deployed also long-term observers in the country. And of course, to check if the way in which elections are held and managed comply with regional and international standards. And in that regard, I think that our statement in this preliminary statement and also my words previously have been quite clear. Unfortunately, what we observed and remarked is that in many significant and fundamental aspects, those elections fell short in the respect of those regional and international standards. Of course, in 2 months, around more or less 2 months, we will also publish a final report that will analyze in detail the phases that we already observed, but also the following one that are still pending, notably the tabulation and notably also the announcement of the results and all the post-electoral phases, eventual also legal grievances that could be also raised by the stakeholders involved. And in that capacity and that report, we also propose some recommendations that we will submit the competent national authorities, hoping that it could be helpful and could foster also a political debate within the country. And in that regard, I share what my friend Andreas Schieder just said, that we hope that there will be a possibility for inclusive, democratic, transparent reform, and if that will be the wish and the will of the political authorities of the country, European Union will be ready to assist in that regard with technical assistance. Thank you.
Next question. I don't see. Okay, yes, please, back there.
Hello. Can you hear me? No.
Hello? Yeah.
Now, yes.
Hi, Umberto Bacchi from Agence France Presse. Given what you have observed, do you have any confidence that the results to be announced will accurately reflect the will of the Zimbabwean people?
Let me say that an electoral observation mission should not try to forecast the future. We are here to observe what will happen. And therefore, in our preliminary statement, we underline those aspects of the procedure in which we feel that the competent bodies and ZEC notably were not fully respecting the provisions of the internal legal order, but we do not want to make any kind of provision. We will just see what will happen, and we will see if their actions and all the next steps of the procedure will comply or not with the regional and international standards, and of course with the national legal framework that is applicable to the next stage of the procedure. Thank you.
Do I see more questions? Please raise your, yes, all the way in the back, please.
My question is, your preliminary report all but condemns this plebiscite and effectively creates a context for a contestation around the result. And references will be made to this preliminary report, although you say you come after 2 months. 2 months is a long way off. So much will have happened on the basis of this preliminary report. What do you think should happen? Because your you've all but condemned the plebiscite.
I'm sorry, but we are not do any kind of condemnation here. We are just reporting what our observers have seen and heard all across the country. I'm speaking about 150 extremely professional and experienced observers with many missions on their back. And on the basis of these data, not second-hand, not rumors, but objective data that's been reported by our people on the ground, we drafted an accurate analysis with what the situation is.
It is on the basis of that analysis that I'm asking.
And
the summary of it is that these elections are not credible, so the outcome will be contested.
The summary of these gentlemen are that there are significant parts of the procedure that were not respecting the international principles. Of course, I do reiterate the fact that we still have to observe the final phases that are still ongoing. You are aware of the fact that some police stations just end up their operational votes early this morning. I mean, there was a significant postponement on many polling stations all across the country. And of course, we do reiterate the hope that any kind of grievance, any kind of appeal, any kind of contestation will be done in a legal framework foreseen and without any kind of violence. This is, of course, the hope of the Electoral Observation Mission. And at this stage, we cannot do any other additional remark exactly because the procedure is still ongoing.
Okay. So yes, we have a question back there.
Thank you. My name is Monica Cheru. I'm with Zimbabwe Now. I would like to ask if the EU is not self-contradicting. On one hand, you are talking about where ZEC and other stakeholders have failed to fulfill their mandates based on the Zimbabwean law and constitution. And then in the same breath, you are challenging laws that were constitutionally passed in Zimbabwe. I don't know, does that make sense? Like the POV and the whatever, the acts that you spoke about. Those were constitutionally passed in Zimbabwe. Are you not choosing to play with the constitution when it suits you?
Well, I'm a bit surprised of your comments. Let me say why. We do fully respect the sovereignty and the independence of Zimbabwe, but when it's up, of course, to manage an electoral observation mission, we should also see how the internal legal framework comply or do not comply with international standards that are relevant. And in that case, not simply us, but a very significant number of stakeholders that were in touch with us, that we met. They were denouncing and sharing with us their deep concern about the fact that the so-called Patriotic Act reduced the space of public debate. They felt somehow a certain environment of fear and tension, and some of them, they were even afraid to meet us, exactly because they didn't want to face the risk of legal consequence on this. And of course, we would have not fulfilled our mandate if we would not have reported what had been shared by us and what has been observed by our observers in that regard, also comparing with the previous legal framework. That's the element that we simply underline, and I do repeat that every analysis is based on objective elements and is based on a clear comparison with the regional and international standards. Thank you.
We have a question here in the back, and then the lady in the pink hat.
Thank you so much. My name is Panashima from Sources Media. If I got you right, you indicated that the Zimbabwean courts are not that
Can you repeat that, please?
so if I got you correct, You indicated that the Zimbabwean courts, the legal system in Zimbabwe is not that independent. And also, some of the observer nations indicated that the legal system in Zimbabwe is not that independent. And here you are saying if there is any contestation, people should call the legal route. Do you think that will call the legal route? Zimbabweans are going to get the intended result. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I would like to stress what I did say in my speech, that I said that the stakeholders, the participating persons we met, express their doubt and concerns about the trust they do have in the judicial system. This is not our evaluation, this is the evaluation of the person we met, and they felt that the fact that many legal cases also were concerning those elections in terms of the candidacy has not been solved before the elections, also didn't give a contribution in that trust. That's what they share with us when we have our meetings, and I would like to remind that there were a very significant number of meetings, 1,600 all around the country. So I think that gave us a good basis of data to assess in that regard. And of course now we will observe very carefully that judicial dimension eventually, if there will be, of course, appeals or cases of a judiciary challenge part of the procedure, and where people are constantly present in the courts, following each one of those procedures, as well as still today present, following also the case of the rest of the around 40 persons from ZESN and ERC, and they will observe with a lot of attention, of course, all the following parts or their cases. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Rumbidai Chizarura, and I'm a freelance journalist. You noted that female participation in politics in Zimbabwe was a bit on the low. Are there any reasons that you managed to observe to why there's low participation from women? Thank you.
Thank you, madam. In fact, when we met many stakeholders from civil society, but also some parties, they express a certain doubt about the reform on quotas. Because if on one side they introduce formally quotas that are fixed by the law within the National Assembly, on the other hand, it seems statistically that if you look at the candidate in the ordinary constituency, we have less women candidates than 5 years ago. Then somehow there was the impression that this system could have cut off ties between the electors and the elected. This is something that many of them shared with us. Of course, I think that these statistics are not positive, because we do truly believe that the participation of women in politics as candidates and in general in the political life of the country is a pillar, really one of the fundamental aspects of a healthy democracy. And we hope that in general there will be in the future very important debate in the country in thinking what could be the possible best reform and means to ensure that this participation will grow up instead of decreasing as it happened to this election. Thank you.
Did we have a question in the middle? Okay. No, if not, then the gentleman. Yeah, she's coming next. First, the gentleman here, and then the lady in the back.
My name is Marshall. I'm a freelance journalist. In my humble understanding, when you have an observation, you have findings, then you make recommendations. But in your findings, you do not explicitly state if elections were free, fair, and credible. But given that reality, why should Zimbabweans from all walks of life take your recommendation seriously if you do not state your position concerning observation on these elections? Thank you.
I think I already answered to this question, but I will try to explain even better. I do repeat that no electoral observation mission, not the one from the European Union, not the one from our African friends and counterparts like the African Union or SADC or the other partners like Commonwealth or Carter Center, none of us is entitled by methodology to give a certification on the validity, on the fairness, on the freedom of elections. This is against our methodology. The methodology seen, of course, to have observers all across the country to collect as many data as possible in a coherent way, and then after that, of course, to try to see if the part of the procedure are complying or not with the standards. And we have been very clear. We told you positive aspect that we observed, for example, that generally these elections were calm, but we also had to underline the aspects in which the procedures fell short from what it was foreseen by the regional and international standards to which Zimbabwe is adhering. Therefore, I think that with this element, each one of you can formulate its own judgment, but our analysis is crystal clear, and I think that having taken account all the different parts of the procedure, having taken account the legal framework as well, the media environment, having taken account the election day, but also the campaign phases, we have done quite a substantial work with very solid grounds, and I'm also happy to see that in general, taking also into account the meetings we had with the other missions and also the public statement, I can see that there is a certain agreement in many aspects of that has been problematic on the procedure. So I think that is strengthening, of course, once more the genuinity and the good job that has been delivered by the Commission. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Yvonne Muchaka. I am a freelance journalist. My question to you is that after you produce your report, and given that institutions like ZEC refuse to meet with you, do you see any of them taking on your recommendations and improving the state of our elections in Zimbabwe? Thank you.
I really hope so, in the sense that, of course, for a mission that has tried to do always its best in terms of professionality, in terms of engagement, it is important, and it is, of course, a matter of also really hope for the future of the country and for this vibrant, strong democratic participation of the people, to see that there will be a will to engage in a reflection. Of course, I would like to reiterate that this is a free choice of the Zimbabwean authorities. We are just providing elements or reflections coming from our analysis, coming from the international standards, to ensure that there will be the possibility for them to enrich the national political debate in that regard. But then it must be a political will of the new government, a political will of the new presidents, and of course a political will at the technical level of ZEC to engage or not. As I told you before, we deeply regret that so far we didn't see the cooperation we expected from those national bodies and from ZEC. And I think that that was really unexpected and sad, taking into account that we have been officially invited by the government, and we already provide as European Union a very significant, important technical and financial assistance. But nevertheless, we are still positive and confident, and we hope that, of course, to see progresses also in that relationship, and eventually, of course, we really hope and we'll do our best to ensure that the final report will give a rich set of fruitful and interesting recommendation, and if there will be the will to engage from outside, there will be the maximum support and will to give our personal contribution in that regard.
So we have time for one more question. It's the gentleman in the white shirt.
Yes, my name is Andrew. I'm a local observer. I just wanted to find out, would you not say that the 2023 elections are better than the previous in terms of the malpractice and the violence, etc. And also, what are the positive or plausible things that you can say that happened in this election which it did not happen before? Or what you would say that perhaps the EU, OM, and the other international standards met those standards? What are those that are positive? Because for now, what we have heard is at the negative part of the side. What about the positives that meet the international standards and also meet the EU OM observer target? Thank you.
Thank you very much. As per our methodology, normally we do not do comparisons with the previous elections. This is of the methodology that we are doing, in the sense that every election has its context, political, as environment, but as you have remarked, in some parts, of course, we explained where we have felt that somehow there was a certain regression in terms of political space of debate, in terms of political freedoms, in terms of right of assembly, for example, in terms of the way in which the procedure was applied. I would like to say in that regard that I would also do positive remarks. I underline many times that in general, the environment that our observers found on the ground was calm. They felt they were experiencing sometimes tensions, but not several episodes of violence, for example. That's what we underlined. And we underlined that in general, the assessment from a large part of the police station was positive, but also we had the cases of those police stations that has been significantly delayed, in some cases even almost 1 day later. And of course, in those cases, they also experienced a certain level of tensions, frustrations from the people that had to wait so many hours, in some cases even one whole day and one night, to exercise the right of vote. So I would say also that I could add to these remarks that the secrecy of the vote is also something that generally was ensured, and there were positive remarks by our observers in that regard. But of course, as we do say and comment and somehow underline those positive aspects, we cannot deny the critical parts that I have extensively already explained. So this is all done in a spirit of very objective analysis based on data. Thank you.
Thank you very much for attending this press conference. I close this press conference now. You will find the preliminary statement, the press release, and the fact sheet at the entrance. You will see us again in about 2 months with the next press conference when we present our final report. Thank you very much.
Approve the form of and the procure ballot boxes, establish and operate polling centers and stations, and accredit both citizen and international observers, media, and party agents. The administration of elections lacked transparency in key areas, as the ZEC did not provide critical information in a timely manner during various stages of the process, which undermines public and stakeholder confidence in its management of the electoral processes. In addition, the restrictions and limitations on the work of election observers, including the late provision or denial of accreditation, severely hindered important independent transparency efforts. voter education. While the ZEC conducted voter education and publicly invited civil society organizations, private voluntary organizations, and faith-based organizations to apply for ZEC accreditation as voter educators in May, some interlocutors reported that they were only granted approval in August, just days before the election. This prevented effective and timely voter education by a range of qualified organizations. Voter registration. The ZEC registered 451,811 new voters and transferred 191,738 registered voters to new locations prior to the elections. Although the voter roll was posted for inspection, public confidence in it remained low because of inaccuracies and errors. There were many reports during the inspection period of voters, finding themselves through the SMS system, but not on the physical voter roll. The ZEC attributed this to new ward boundaries and the delimitation. The ZEC attributed this to new ward boundaries and the additional polling stations following the boundary delimitation exercise. The ZEC did not provide electoral stakeholders with a copy of the final voter roll that could be easily reviewed or audited. Candidate registration. The Candidate Nomination Court sat on June 21 to process candidates for all levels of the election, including for the party lists. The ZEC issued directives on how the party lists should be structured just one day before the court, which constrained the ability of some parties to provide adequate numbers of women for provincial council party lists. Parties were allowed to resubmit lists, but this caused delays. Late decisions on these cases meant that ballots were printed late, which the ZEC cited as a reason for late delivery of ballot papers in some areas. Only the ruling party managed to submit party lists and candidates for every constituency and ward election, and ran uncontested in around 10% of the wards. Political environment. While incidents of political violence were fewer than in 2018, tensions and polarization increased in the months preceding the elections as legislation restricting individuals' freedoms of speech, movement, and association, such as the Criminal Law Codification Amendment Act, also known as the Patriotic Act, and the PVO Amendment Bill were introduced. While the PVO legislation has yet to become law, but coupled with the Patriotic Act, its potential enactment has produced a stifling effect on Zimbabwean civil society. Campaign period, including social media. The campaign took place in a restrictive and highly polarized environment. Authorities were reported to have banned more than 300 public gatherings, making it extremely difficult for opposition parties and candidates to engage with potential supporters and the electorate. There were isolated instances of violent intra-party and inter-party clashes. Inter-party violence resulted in one reported death in Harare on August 3rd, 2023. The Patriotic Act, adopted in July, further stifled the right to freedom of peaceful assembly and negatively affected the exercise of the rights of freedom of association and expression, especially in the context of the campaign. Participation and inclusion. The legal framework contains commitments to ensure gender parity and provides for temporary measures to promote participation of women. However, these measures are not fully enabled in subordinate legislation, and no sanctions are in place for non-compliance. As a result, participation of women was less than in the previous elections, as political parties generally failed to ensure gender balance among their nominated candidates for directly elected seats, relying solely on seats reserved exclusively for women to give any inclusion for women. The large increase in candidate nomination fees limited all but the wealthy from running for National Assembly seats. Zimbabwe's political parties also generally failed to take steps to promote the participation of youth and people with disabilities as candidates. Role of civil society and election observers. Civil society plays a critical role in ensuring support for institutional electoral processes as well as the development of democratic space in a country. Notwithstanding pressure from authorities, Zimbabwe enjoys a vibrant civil society. The Catholic Commission for Justice and Peace, the Zimbabwe Council of Churches, the Zimbabwe Electoral Support Network, ZESN, and the Electoral Resource Center, among other civic organizations, have been involved for decades in strengthening civil participation as well as engaging on policies to improve the quality of electoral and democratic processes. These organizations deployed observers on the election day, and many regularly engage in civic education to promote inclusion and transparency of the electoral processes. The Carter Center noted, however, that there was a limited civil society participation in the August elections because of state restrictions and the ZEC's limited consultation of civic society in various electoral processes. The Zimbabwean government invited the Carter Center to launch an election observation mission for the August 23rd elections. However, authorities did not accredit 30 of the center's short-term observers. This action represented a severe and unwarranted obstruction of the Carter Center's mission, inconsistent with commonly recognized and respected norms and practices. This disrupted the center's methodology, forcing last-minute adjustments in order to enable observation activities while maintaining its core principles of independence, impartiality, and fact-based reporting. Concluding, with the tabulation of results still underway at some tally centers, it is critical for Zimbabweans to wait for the announcement of the ZEC's final results in the coming days, and for key political leaders to abide by the provisions of the Peace Pledge. Given the highly polarized environment and lack of trust among political stakeholders, it is now especially critical for the ZEC to publish detailed reports at the polling station level, allowing political parties and observers to cross-verify the results in accordance with international best practice to help ensure transparency and credibility of the election process. The Carter Center wishes to thank all the stakeholders who have taken the time to meet with the mission. And we also express our sincere thanks and appreciation to all the media represented here today. A preliminary statement will be released shortly, and a final comprehensive report that includes recommendations will be released in the next few months. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. In a rush to jump into our findings for you, I neglected to introduce the other members of the panel. I have Dr. David Carroll, who is the Director of the Democracy Program from the Carter Center's Atlanta headquarters, and Masha Janušević, who is the Mission Director here in Zimbabwe. We would be delighted to take any questions from the media. Perhaps we can take a few questions at a time. We have people standing by with microphones on the edges of the room if anyone has a question. Questions? It's coming to you. And if you could please announce your name and which media outlet you're representing, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Yvonne Muchaka. I am a freelance journalist. And I think I'll ask this question that we've been asking all the observer missions have given us their reports. Would you say that this election can be categorized as free, fair, and credible? Thank you.
Thank you very much for that question. As we have said, this is a preliminary report, and many aspects of the electoral process are still ongoing, so it is very premature to make any categorization at this point in time. Perhaps the final report may attempt to do so. But in general, our objective is to come and observe the elections and to make reports with a view to ensuring that our recommendations, when taken on board, would add value to subsequent improvements in the electoral process. So an assessment of whether it is free or fair or so, such a categorical assessment at this point in time is premature.
Other questions?
Considering that my name is Patrick Mija, I'm a freelance journalist. We've been having elections since 1980, and your answer to your question just now say you said you were hoping that your recommendations will be considered in the next set of elections. Would you say the elections that we had today, these 2023 elections, would you say there's been an improvement or it is a deterioration from the previous elections that you've observed in Zimbabwe?
As I have said, to make a final definitive statement about whether it's free, fair, and credible, or there are definitive improvements, that will only come in the final report. It's premature at this point in time to say that. But we have made very clear observations which are fact-based, and you can make your own judgment from that.
Sorry. Yes, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Anna Chibamu. Okay. My name is Anna Chibamu. I'm a freelance journalist. I can see you've written a waiting piece. I understand in the last election, Zimbabwe was involved in some sort of social disturbances that led to loss of lives. In the event that political parties this time around don't agree on the results, is the Carter Center going to be involved in trying to wage peace or mediate in the conflict that might happen? I'm not saying there is a conflict, but something might happen.
The Carter Center is a peaceful and peace-loving organization, and we hope and pray that things turn out well. But obviously, as an important observer in the electoral process, when called upon to promote peace, I'm sure the Carter Center may not be opposed to that. But our primary goal is to observe the elections and to make a report, and hopefully some of the recommendations that we make may be found useful in terms of adding value to the preparations for the next election.
Other questions? Anyone? One more question in front here.
All right, just a follow-up question to what she asked. When you look at the environment prevailing in Zimbabwe, would you say we have a semblance of positive peace in our country? Or like she is saying, it is a suspicion that we have as the media to say the conditions that are prevailing are not conducive for sustainable peace in Zimbabwe at the present moment because of lack of trust that is there between the people in the critical institutions that have been assigned to hold a credible, free and fair election. As the Carter Center, what is your comment on that general atmosphere prevailing in Zimbabwe, and what would be your recommendation to the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission and the institutions that have been given this role to ensure a credible, free and fair election in Zimbabwe?
You see, in our statement, we made it clear that although there have been, in terms of violent incidents, fewer compared to 2018, we have also observed increasing tension leading to the election. We made that point. We also know that Zimbabwe has a history of post-election violence. But we have also reported that in our observation on election day, it looked calm and peaceful. And we have also urged that SDEC prepares to make final results available. The political leaders should observe or respect the peace pledge, and also the ZEC on its part should ensure that the process of collation and tabulation and sharing of information is transparent. So really, I think from all this, it's clear that our hope is that as it has started well, it should end well. But as to whether we will get involved in other things, that really is not something that we can speak about.
Unless there's any last questions, that will be all for today. Thank you very much for your attendance and for your interest in our findings.
minute.